Hello.
Hello. Episode 10? 11.
Episode 11, yeah. I'm Al.
I'm Diz. Out on an island, episode 11. What a trip.
I know. We'll just start off with the land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge that we're on stolen land. It's native land belonging to the Hawaiian kingdom. And neither of us are native Hawaiian.
Yeah. Not officially. We have like a weird thing in this state where like I think the state technically considers you a citizen of the Hawaiian kingdom or something if you were born here. I don't really know what the whole thing on that is about. I think you qualify for like a citizen of Hawaii license if you were born here. But
oh, that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think that's like the stipulation. I don't know. I know that's what it used to be. I don't know if that's still true. I'm sure it is because Hawaiian blood is like not super prominent these days.
Yeah. It's really, really hard to find someone with over 25%, I believe. So they just did some restructuring about Hawaiian Homelands, I think. So they're asking people if they want to, like, if they would take a sum of money to remove their name from the list for Hawaiian Homelands, which, like, because there's just so many people on the list to qualify, like, there aren't enough houses for people to qualify. Like, people have lived and died decades on the list and not ever having like a home.
Yeah, I've worked a little bit like with that subject matter in like my field of profession, and it gets really complicated really quickly.
Yeah.
Anyway, wow, that was a thing.
Yeah. There was something I said that I posted on like my private Facebook that I was going to talk about in episode 10, and I forgot to talk about it. So I just want to talk about it now. So like, I'm a wrestling fan, and this wrestler CM Punk, he usually comes out in band shirts when he's not wrestling, or like he has this sweater, like, or zip up hoodie that has like his dog's name on it. He like reps his dog so hard. It's really cute. Yeah. I think it was last Wednesday he came out in a shirt that said abortion rights are human rights. And I was just like, this is so amazing. Like, and they just zoomed in on it. Like, they didn't shy away from the shirt at all. Any opportunity they got to get a close up of him was not just like on his face, you know, like it was nice to see that the decision makers behind what shots make it to TV, you know, chose to not shy away from like showing the shirt. So they didn't verbally acknowledge it in any way, you know, just they also didn't not show it. It was just so nice. I was like, oh my gosh, here they are. And so like it kind of like indirectly like conveyed like that they support like women and abortions and autonomy, bodily autonomy. And it was just really cool.
Yeah, dude, that's really cool. It's also really cool that dude is using his platform for something like that. You know, like you see so many celebrities that have so much agency to do good in the world, and they just don't give a shit because, you know, people are inherently terrible or whatever. So
yeah. Maybe just inherently selfish.
Something. I mean, that's splitting hairs, I feel like.
We could go on a whole conversation about like the intrinsic value of humans. And like, I also believe that like, I don't agree with the language of it, but not John Locke, John Adams, I think, had the behind the veil scenario, which is like, if you strip away all characteristics that make people, would people be inherently good or inherently bad, you know, like if nobody was watching? And like I definitely fall on the side of like most people would continue to be self-serving. Yeah.
There's like this really good quote. I don't remember who this quote was by, so excuse me, but there's this really good quote in like dealing with like the duality of like good and evil and humankind, where they say man is not evil based on his actions. Man is evil for his want and ability to justify his actions.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely find who that is and put it in the show notes because that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, totally. And it also just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Anything in the news you want to talk about? I mean, it just gets more horrible every day.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a ray of sunshine in our state. So our Hawaii is trying to get sustainable, like release our, or not release, but like restructure our dependence on like imported goods, particularly imported food by the year 2050 with like a firm goal to double food production by 2030, which like is like, oh, we have a lot of barriers to overcome, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, just to not to cut you off there, but we're definitely in my ballpark here now. And Ige passed that bill to double food. Governor Ige, that's governor of Hawaii currently. He passed that bill in 2015, I think. So, you know, we haven't been doing amazing on it. And then the COVID pandemic didn't help. But yeah, there is an effort to double the amount of local produce, which is literally my entire job. That's like literally what I do. For like, I spend about 90% of my time writing about that particular subject.
Well, thank you for your hard work.
Pay me.
I have no money to do that.
Okay. I have no desire to write more about it.
So some of the barriers include like we live on an island, right? Every island can't produce enough food to like sustain the people on that island. Like Oahu alone, like sheer size cannot produce enough food to feed 1 million people or like the 1 million people that live on Oahu. So like there's these barriers with like production and other aspects of the supply chain and these different bottlenecks. And so the state has created, and I guess it's not the state, I guess it's people, created like food hubs, which act as small farmer-focused aggregators to boost the local food supply and then like also redistribute it. And I think that's just a really cool thing. So farmers are kind of coming together to handle this problem on their own.
Yeah, I won't say the name of the nonprofit that I work for, but that's definitely what the nonprofit that I work for does, like everything that you just mentioned.
Nice.
Yeah, we're also looking into like creating beginner farmer training right now for workforce development to try to reinvigorate the dying agricultural industry here, because what people need to understand about the agricultural industry here is it has lots of potential and we have all of the productive ag land in the world. But what we don't have is the reason. There's no incentive to be a farmer anymore because it just doesn't pay as well as working at like a hotel does. There's a lot of people making efforts right now to try to make that a more appealing business by, you know, providing educational resources for people who are interested in farming and like by acting as a consult after they finish their training programs, keep them stable as they like maintain independent success. And yeah, there's lots of neat stuff going on with that.
Yeah. One of the other things that I know about is they have like I don't know who it does. I'm going to have to find it and post a link to it. This one program has like a 2-year mentorship program because some people are like, oh, I want to be farmers, but they, you know, don't have access to their own land. And so this organization helps them get access to their land. It partners them with like existing profitable, knowledgeable farmers, and it helps them get to that point of sustainability. And then they can choose if they want to like give the land back to the organization or if they want to keep, you know, producing on that land. And then I'm not sure if how the buying process goes from there, but they get like a test site, you know?
Yeah, generally like the way that works from there is that if you do have a nonprofit or a program who has an aggregation facility, they'll give you the opportunity to aggregate and market through that facility for either a fee or some kind of, you know, some kind of deal that you work out, be it like produce that is like supplied to the program so the food hub runs but yeah, we're literally in like my field of work right now, like right fucking smack dab in the middle of it. So
oh, well, would you rather share, is there anything in the news you want to talk about or?
I don't know. There's lots of sad stuff. There's dead children and adults and shootings and all kinds of fucking shit going on all the time. I'm like at this point where the news is just like, do I want to watch the news today, or like, do I want to like continue having a good day? You know what I mean? Like, it's really that black and white right now. So
yeah,
not really, basically. I mean, yeah, like I said, the shooting in Texas that happened, I didn't read too heavily into it. You know, there's 18 children dead, I think, and 3 adults, and that's fucking brutal. And, you know, my heart goes out to all of the families and all of the survivors and everybody who is touched by that tragedy. I'm really sorry the world's so fucked up.
Yeah, same. I got the alert while I was teaching, I think. So it was really like, oh man,
yeah.
I guess let's talk about this now too, you know?
Yeah, totally. You can't like not talk about it, but fuck, it's so brutal. Just like, especially when kids are involved, you know, it's just like, God damn it, like how fucking evil do you have to be? But yeah, we got lyrics for today. We got a...
Not yet. Maybe by the end of this episode, we'll have one. So yeah, today we're going to talk about gender roles, I guess, traditional gender roles, maybe our own personal gender roles. I don't know. Our community's general stereotypical gender roles. And if there's like punk rock gender roles or anything like that, like conforming, non-conforming, whatever. Any personal updates?
On my gender role or my life?
Either is fine, I guess.
I guess. I don't know. I'm in a weird place in my life right now. I feel like it's like a heavy area of transition. I'm like really trying to decide, you know, what my next move is. And I guess that's just like the human condition to always like be, or I guess not everybody, my human condition is just to always kind of be like seeing what's coming down the bend, you know? So, but yeah, I've had a lot of existential crises lately, so that's been fun.
Awesome.
That's kind of like the good and bad thing about valuing your mental health is like you're super fucking self-aware. Because I'm so self-aware about it, like I'm not going to deal with it because it's important that I deal with it. But like I also realize that a lot of this stems from not necessarily like my need to control things, but like I just need to have like a general guideline to walk to feel comfortable. I don't need a plan because plans are too messy. But I want just like a little dotted line to follow at best, you know? So I'm trying to draw myself a little dotted line.
Oh, you're doing really great.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't really have any big updates. Everything is just cruising right along. I actually have in academia, there are stages to writing. You write in my field, other fields are different, and I've submitted to other fields and like it's a little weird. In my field, you submit an extended abstract, which is like 800 words. And then they're like, hey, we really like this thing that you wrote. Why don't you write like a full-on paper about it and then come and talk about it at this conference? So you write the abstract and submit it to a venue. The venue approves it or denies it. And then you write the draft, and then it gets edited, and then you write a camera-ready paper. So way back when we started this podcast, I was working so many jobs, and I kept asking for extensions for like this one paper because the extended abstract got accepted. I did like minimal data collection and analysis. And there was just so much going on. Like my stepmom had brain cancer and I'm not there. Just mentally, that's like a lot to handle. And then like I had job stuff and was applying for jobs, had interviews, all this kind of stuff. So extensions. And then finally, I just kind of gave up. I was like, okay, this is clearly, I'm not going to make this deadline. And so last week, so I got the email like, oh, we didn't get your draft. And I was
fuck.
I know. Well, no, this was like in February or something. They were like, we didn't get your draft. And I'm like, I know you didn't. And so, but last week I got an email that was like, you need to submit your camera ready paper. And I was like, I don't have one because I didn't write it because we acknowledged that I didn't submit a draft. So now I'm like, do I write a paper for this conference? Do I not write a paper? I don't know. So that's kind of my new conundrum is like, do I have 2 papers to write right now or 3?
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
That is quite a conundrum, especially for you because you don't like to be not on top of your shit.
Yeah. So I think I'm just going to write it and submit it and see what happens. Like if they're like, cool, and I'll still be working with an editor on it. If they're like, cool, we will accept it, then awesome. And if they're not, I'm also okay with that too, because it's written and I can submit it to another venue.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. Other than that, personal life is pretty status. No existential crises for me, which is nice for a change. I'm sorry that you have to go through that.
Don't apologize. I mean, the shit you have to climb through is the shit you choose to take, right? So
I like that. What do you think about gender roles?
Actually, this is something that like I can speak a lot to. It's because the industry that I was in before this industry particularly was male dominated, to say the least. I had a painting business. It was not like I had employees or anything. It was just me doing jobs. But I've been interfaced with some pretty shitty situations doing that. Whenever men come around or like on the scene, like one job in particular comes to mind where like I was doing this house and these people had agreed to everything that I said that I was going to do. They agreed to my price. They agreed to everything. And then they had this guy hanging around who was not really sure what his role was there. I think he was maybe a carpenter or something, but anyway, he came in. The only way that I can describe it is he was just like swinging his dick, and just being like, and I guess like he got in these people's ear and we're like telling them like, I can do what she's doing for cheaper. And she's telling you have to do this stuff. You don't have to do this stuff. And it's like, dude, like anything that I told these people they have to do is because like it's necessary for like the integrity of like that paint job. And this guy just was like cutting corners, but he did it by just like definitely being like, I'm a guy. Look at all the things I know, like in that industry, it was so common for people to want to believe that men were more capable of doing like anything in the construction industry, better than women. And that's just some like antiquated fucking patriarchy shit. It's still very much alive. I dealt with it for almost, more than half a decade, just endlessly.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. But when I think of gender roles, that's what I think of. You know what I mean? Like, especially like growing up in Hawaii, gender roles were super solidified as well. What about you?
Well, a couple things come to mind. The first is I got dissuaded from science from my family, So like I always think of work, I guess. And I had this friend and we did chemistry experiments together after school, but like my parents were like, oh, you like him, you have a crush on him. And I was like, I don't. We like literally, we were playing with pH paper, right? And it's literally like, that's what we were doing. And they just kept making fun of me. I don't know. I decided pretty early on, I didn't want to be like a woman, like how society views women, like because I didn't want to be a mom. I didn't want to be relegated to like the one table, while all the dudes are doing dude things, the women are like at the table eating cupcakes and talking story or whatever, or hanging out with all the kids. Like I didn't want to be hanging out with all the kids. I want to be hanging out talking about things, with people. I mean,
yeah, sure.
Women are people, and those people are having their own experiences, but like, why was it so gendered and separate, And I think it's really interesting because if I would have been encouraged as a kid, I would have gotten to where I am sooner professionally.
Oh,
because
interesting.
Clearly I'm still in, a science field. Just it took a really long time to get here. And I just wonder if I had been encouraged differently and not like dissuaded because I was a girl, what could I have really done?
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, it's really interesting how that works because like I mentioned, growing up in Hawaii, like gender roles are super defined here because especially like in the early 2000s, like you may as well have still been living in like 1985. I definitely grew up with even like my parents telling me things like you can't drive dad's truck because girls don't drive trucks like that. But they were like totally comfortable to like let my friends who were not their children, like my male friends who are like not their children, like drive the truck. You know what I mean?
It's so messed up.
Yeah. And I mean, it's how they were raised. So it's like, you can't like knock them too hard. I mean, you should, but still, it's kind of like this weird thing where it's like, that's just how they were raised. That's like some small town mentality, And even so, like, the masculine and feminine sides of things are still so segregated here. Like, girls hang out on the beach in their bikini and the boys go surfing kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's all very... And like those barriers like do get broken. Like, it's not like there's not exceptions to the rule. It's just those are like the most common, things that you experience here.
Yeah, the exceptions kind of prove the rule in some parts. So like that goes back to the conversation, like having conversations at the table with the women, right? Instead of doing whatever it is, women are seen as like a support person, as opposed to like being the main character in their own life. Their role is like to support other people as they do things, right?
Yeah, totally. And like we definitely praise women for martyring themselves. If you are willing to like martyr yourself for like to uplift somebody else or sacrifice anything for, especially like a man, then you're seen as a good woman, a good wife. And that's really fucking depressing.
Yeah, it is. I've been having this weird experience. So like we travel a lot, and one of the things that we like to do is cruises, because it's a great way to see a bunch of places and decide where you want to go spend more time. And then like also room and food is included in like the price and stuff. And a lot of cruise lines, I know there's a lot of debate on like the cruise lines that we prefer do a lot to like, make sure they're protecting reefs. They do gray water recycling. Like there's a lot of stuff to make them more eco-friendly. Mm-hmm. So that's nice. But one of these cruise lines, like I do all the booking. It's my email and everything. The email comes, hello, spouse is not my name. Like it's not addressed to me. It's addressed to my mister. It's like, hello, the mister. And I'm like, no, I'm me. And then like I updated my title. This is so weird. Like I updated my title to doctor because you can't put the PhD suffix in. And like I've been on the phone with them this past week trying to resolve an issue. This is a new cruise line that we've never cruised with before. And like, they keep calling me Miss. I updated that to doctor. At what point do you really press it?
Yeah.
I'm almost to the point with them of pressing it. But when we were in Vegas, in March, it came up, we were sitting there with like the mister's family. Our server like just casually was assuming people's gender at the table, and then he called me Ms. and I was like, oh, it's doctor. And he was like, excuse me? And I was like, oh, if you want to call me a title, it's doctor, like,
yeah,
don't assume people's stuff, kind of. And then like this whole thing happened where then I got like dismissed a little bit. Like my mom-in-law, I don't think any of them listened to the podcast, so I think this is fine to talk about. But his mom, the mister's mom, was just like, oh, it's new, like we're all getting used to it. And like I looked at his sibling and I was like, did I just get like, I forget the proper word, but like I like got like dismissed in status. And then we had the Mr. Sibling, and I explained like why what happened was like dismissive, because like it just minimized my whole experience and
your accomplishments.
My accomplishments. And at that point it was what are we at, like 10 months out from having a doctorate, and like so it's not like new. Like
totally.
Yeah,
it's
weird.
for everybody listening out there, I am married and I'm married to a man. I refer to him as my partner often in case there was any confusion about that. And the marriage was not one that was, oh, we're fucking soulmates and we're going to be together and blah, blah, blah. It was like a marriage of what makes sense. You know, we built a house together. He has my credit score. I use his health insurance, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So I have a really difficult time with being a wife because the world, I shouldn't say people, I just say like, this world that we live in puts these expectations on you, you know what I mean? And like, I've had this conversation with him lots of times where I tell him like, you know, sometimes like I don't even think that I want to be married because it's not fair that like I am ultimately like our success is judged by you. People ultimately think that like you carry like this relationship on your shoulders, and like when they ask about the house, they ask you about the house. You know what I mean? When they ask about finances or building or any of those things, they ask you about those things, you know? Even like sometimes when I go to hang out with my friends, like sometimes they'll ask me how he is before they ask me, right? About how I'm doing, even though like I'm physically the person in the room. And also, like, I'm not going to fucking answer for him. I don't fucking know how he is. Call him, you know? Like, and so, like, yeah, I have a lot of issues with that because I have worked very hard for everything that I have. I clawed my way out of being a high school dropout with, like, nothing to show except, like, being able to wait tables into, like, actually having a career. And it does suck, you know, that, like, my career is diminished by his dick. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. That's basically it, right? So it is really tricky. You know, even when I was a painter professionally, I didn't only do painting, I did restoration. I did like a lot of wood restoration, working with like a lot of different products. And that's really hard work and it's really laborious. And, you know, it's definitely like a skilled trade. And like, despite me doing that, people still asked him more about the construction process on our house. I don't know if anyone's ever asked me anything about the construction process on our house, honestly. So, and I should mention to everybody, he's a fucking IT guy. Okay. He's not a big, tough, manly man swinging an axe and wielding a hammer. He's an IT guy. So, you know, it could be a toss-up between which one of us knows more about construction, but just because he's a guy, they ultimately assume, you know, he does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty maddening. That's the kind of stuff that I think I also don't like being a wife. Like, I don't like that term. I don't like the term husband, and I don't like the term wife. And I think a lot of that is because, like, even though, you know, we were in LIRB and we, you know, got married and worked hard to make our relationship like be one that works for us with the ways that we are and are not in alignment with socially constructed gender norms, right?
Sure.
So like, yeah, I'm big on what is fair and what is equal. And I think a lot of that is because like I came from like when my parents got divorced when I was 8. Well, they separated when I was 8. The divorce actually went through when I was older. I don't know how old. And then they both my mom and my dad married people that also maintained like more traditional gender roles. Like my stepdad cooked and cleaned, but for the most part, everything else was like divided accordingly to like the way that society deems you divide things in the house. And whenever I say my parents, I mean my mom and my stepdad, basically. except for rare exceptions when I was like a kid. Just watching how they operated, I was like, this is not fair. Like, this is not equal distribution of labor, especially like when you think about things like cognitive load, like we talked about last time. Like, not only do I have to execute a thing, I also have to keep tabs on like where you're at in the process. Like, that's not fair or equitable. And like, I don't know. I just really want to not be treated a certain way just because I have a vagina and like bigger boobs than you, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Or like have it assume that like, because of like surely based on like anatomy that I am the weaker sex, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, based on physical stature, you know, because like, honestly, like if we're going to compare scars, women take a lot of shit and have throughout the history of mankind. You know, I think that we can definitely say that, you know, we're pretty fucking tough. And you know, just because of like things like niche agriculture and antiquated religious values, like to be discounted on that strength is really, really disappointing, especially when like, as a woman, you have to wield that strength so often in your just everyday life just to get through this world. You know, like we touched a little bit upon last week, like knowing that if I'm going to walk to my car in like a dark parking lot, like I should have my keys between my knuckles. You know, I should be ready in case something happens. Like that, I think that world is a little bit tougher to live in than a world where it's like, oh, I'm going to go get my cigarettes out of my car or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's not that simple.
It's definitely not that simple. There's this really great, are you aware of CrimethInc? They're like an organization. Yeah, they're pretty cool. They're like a zine and they make posters and stuff. But when I was growing up, or like, I guess not when I was growing up, but like when I was a teenager, I used to have this poster on my wall. And I actually just found it online. You can order these posters from them, by the way. But it is like a little cartoon. We'll put it on the Instagram for anybody who's interested in seeing this themselves. But it's like a little cartoon of like little cartoon character who's like half in like pants and a shirt and half in a dress. And it has text next to it in black and pink. And so in the black, it says, for every girl who is tired of acting weak when she is strong, there is a boy tired of appearing strong when he feels vulnerable. And for every boy who is burdened with the constant expectation of knowing everything, there's a girl tired of people not trusting her intelligence. And so the poster goes on and on about these gender roles and, you know, how for every boy, there's a girl, for every girl, there's a boy. And like, I think that is the right way to be thinking about gender roles in this day and age, because we know that to be true. But that's not how we think about gender roles, unfortunately.
No, and it's so weird because they're social constructs, right? So they're just kind of these made up things that we all like buy into. And so in one of my classes today in small group discussion, a student like just asked me like, do you believe that there are differences in the biological sexes? And I was like, well, from a social, like socialization place, like, no, like I'm an existentialist. I believe that existence precedes everything. Like before you can actually become something, you have to exist. And there have been some neurological or neuroscientific studies done on like brain chemistry, brain activation, parts of brain size and stuff that does tend to skew toward biological differences in the brain. I was like, this is also, so the book, I'm actually really looking forward to reading it because I haven't read it. It's called Brain Sex. And so it points out that there are biological differences, but like these biological differences also were found in like socialized men and women. And then like also some of the studies they discuss are like post-mortem. So not only is it like they've already experienced the process of socialization, but then they're also dead, you know? And like, so they found some differences. And I do think it's really important to to, like, if there are, like, if that is real and neurochemistry is different for men and women, then that's cool. But that still doesn't mean that we should socialize people based on those differences. You know, we should try to, like, understand why those differences exist, which I think is where neuroscience is at in the process.
Yeah.
But not treat people or raise them differently because, like, oh, see, there is a biological difference.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's really interesting, or I guess not interesting. It's really shitty to ostracize somebody based on, like, your perception of their sex, or, like, you know, and like, women get the brunt of that a lot, but, like, you know, just like this little poster says, like, so do men in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of the times it is really heartbreaking to watch men exist in this world as well, in this, like, world of rules that we have put up, where it's like, you have to be tough, you have to be emotionless, you have to be strong, you have to be, you know, all of these things are not sustainable on, like, a day-to-day basis, you know? And so, like, to tell a man that he is weak or pathetic for having an emotion is insane. Like, he's a fucking human. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that's where, like, these things become problematic. Like, neurochemistry and, like, biology and all of those things go to a certain extent, but, like, there are traits that just make us innately human, and a lot of those traits are not, you know, subjective to one sex or the other, but we do treat them like they are.
Yeah, we do. So another thing like, that book doesn't even talk about, like, it only looks at, like, the binary, and gender is a spectrum. So I also shared a little bit about the genderbread person, which talks about, like, gender identity, gender expression, what anatomical sex is, and attraction. So and then sexual orientation. So, and how all of those things are different. And when I think of me and what my identity is, I am a person. Like, I don't identify as, like, a gender in my head. I am a person. And so, like, it's been really complicated as we have opened up all of these different, like, genders, like, gender identities, because, like, it's like, oh, well, I don't really feel like I am cis. I don't feel like I'm genderqueer, you know, like, I don't know. I'm just like, I am Al. I am Alicia when I think of me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. Like, I do want to be respectful of whatever anybody feels like they want to be identified as, or, you know, like, who they feel like they are on the inside. But, like, it gets convoluted sometimes when you do have that opinion of yourself, like, because in my head, I'm just you know what I mean? And, like, I grew up in a house of women. I have 2 older sisters, and, you know, like, they're very, very typical girls. And, you know, when I was growing up, you know, what word people used to use a lot that you never hear anymore is tomboy. Yeah. You know, and so, like, when I was growing up, it was always like, oh, she's a tomboy, you know what I mean? Which is, like, I guess, like, yeah, I mean, it was interesting that it had its own name, you know, if you like, and like I said, we don't really use that terminology anymore. I don't hear that often when people refer to kids now. And I don't know if that is, like, progress or if that's just, like, forgotten terminology. It is great that we're not using it anymore, because, like, you shouldn't make a girl feel like she's something different if she just, like, doesn't want to wear fucking dresses or something, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that in itself was just this really weird, it put you in this place of exclusivity in terms of your identity and, like, how you were perceived to the world. Like, I couldn't be a girl, even though I am 100% biologically a woman, you know, because I was not dressing like one. That was from a small child. So, like, that's really weird. And I wonder, you know, and I guess, like, the male equivalent for that is, like, calling, like, a little boy, like, a sissy.
A sissy, yeah. That's what I was thinking too.
Which also sucks that we start, you know, so young with kids. And like I said, I don't think that's really a thing anymore, not in this particular like culture and community. I don't really hear it, but I can't really speak for the rest of the country and or the world.
Well, and I don't even know. Yeah. If we think about what gender roles and stereotypes are in other parts of the world, like I can't even imagine. It would be really cool to do an exploration of that with people who actually live other places. Yeah, because I can just speak anecdotally, but even then, like, I don't even know how much of that experience is an isolated experience. So I'm thinking actually about, so I have a friend who lived in Norway and they were raising a kid, their kid, and they were raising it gender neutral. And I had heard, and I don't know if it's true or accurate, but I had heard that in Norway, like that is common practice to raise a child gender neutral, and then they, you know, pick their own gender and what they want to be called and how they want to be addressed, like at like 5 or something, you know, when they're cognizant enough to like form that opinion. And I that's just really cool. I don't know if it's true. I just know that they were raising their kid gender neutral.
Yeah. So like the really interesting thing about gender roles in human history, this is up for debate, but like one of the big theories out there is that it was niche agriculture, right? That changed everything about gender roles and even established patriarchy in the first place amongst humans.
When you say niche agriculture, what do you mean?
Niche agriculture is basically just the implication that one person is growing one particular crop and like withholding resources or like knowledge on how to grow that crop for their own personal gains. If your neighbor down the street grows cabbage and he has all of the right things to grow cabbage, then that is his profession, right? And then if you want that, you have to either buy it or trade for it, but like that is his specialty. And once upon a time, like when humans were nomadic tribes, when we were hunters and gatherers, we didn't adhere to those kinds of principles with agriculture because we were hunters and gatherers. And so like at that time, debatably, but like in theory, even women had the skills to hunt and gather the same that men did, because that meant that everybody could survive if everybody had the skill. So once the nomadic tribes stopped being nomadic and once niche agriculture was established and currency started being established for that niche agriculture, then suddenly you found yourself with the necessity. So like this also goes into sexual partners, because humans used to be multi-sex partners. That's why the penis is shaped the way it is, with like the plunger-esque head, so that it could pull other sperm out in competing with multi-sex partners, right? So once this was established, it comes down to, I'm going to have one woman so that I know that my progeny is my progeny. My woman only has sex with me so that any spawn that I make is guaranteed mine, so that I can pass my niche down to my children. And so that is like essentially the point where like women started becoming property, you know? Yeah, this is like a really interesting whole tangent. He's an author, his name is Chris Ryan, and he talks a lot about this. Anyway, it makes a lot of sense though, you know, because at that point you establish like patriarchy. Like he talks a lot about bonobo apes and chimpanzees, because bonobo apes are matriarchal in their society, and chimpanzees are patriarchal, and bonobos use sex to essentially like neutralize situations and like keep things calm and even, and chimpanzees use masculinity in war. So, yeah.
Yay.
So which side do you think we're closer to as a species? But yeah, so like it's really cool to see that though, because, you know, bonobo apes are inherently, they value their feminine side of the species over males because they're overall just more efficient as a species that way. And there's arguments for how that could work with humans and blah, blah, blah. I know that like there's a lot of argument for that, to say like, well, if women just rule the world, but I honestly, you know, let's not go there. I think
no.
Everybody has the ability to be pretty shitty regardless of what's in your pants. But yeah, so like gender roles, you know, they're just these fucking constructs. They're just like there was like a moment in time where we decided that we needed them, and like we haven't gotten to the point where we have decided that we don't anymore.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could get there. Have you ever been not unfairly, like, but like, is there anything lasting that happened to you because of your gender that still affects you today, or like that you're still trying to work through?
I would say that, like, purely based on my gender, this is an interesting one, and I would be interested for anybody listening, if you have your own experience with this, I'd like to hear about it. But, you know, I've been playing music since I was about 11 years old, and I've been like into punk rock that whole time, and my experience with being like a woman in the punk rock scene has been good. Music in general was really interesting because, you know, alongside being in punk bands and stuff, like I used to pick up like gigs in town where I'm from to play like for dinner services and just go like play like Creedence Clearwater fucking covers on an acoustic guitar while people ate dinner and shit, you know? Mm-hmm. And people used to come up and compliment me a lot. And I had like a very visceral moment one day where I realized that, like, fuck, the only reason that that's happening is because I'm a girl. You know what I mean? Like, I could have, if I had been a guy and doing that, it became very clear in that moment that people were looking at me and being like, oh my God, she's left-handed. Oh my God, she's a girl. You know what I mean? And like, you get all of these things. Even when I was in punk bands, like people used to be like, oh, you're just such a tiny little thing with such a big voice. That would be like a weird fucking thing to say to a dude. You know what I mean? I think at some point it kind of fucks me up with music or like any kind of art that I use as a form of expression, because it's hard to tell whether or not people actually value it or if people value the fact that I'm a woman and created it despite the hardship of being a woman. You know what I mean? Because that happens. I think a lot of people in the arts, without even thinking about it, will say things like that to you and not realize that like it kind of shits on everything you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
How about
yeah, it
you?
does.
Yeah, it does.
I think, well, the thing that's coming up, it's not even anything that happened, you know, I'm a professor, and women tend to be unfairly evaluated in student evaluations.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, people are harsher on women, particularly young women, especially men who are taking classes from young women. And so I've had incidents in the past where I would try to work with students and they just had problems with like whatever their grade was or whatever. And there were 3 incidents that happened, and they all were with white men, and it was just like 2 plagiarized, and 1 just like wasn't happy with their grade. And basically what it came down to was, after all these issues were resolved, which my department backed me up on everything, and so did my college and stuff. But my division chair pulled me aside and was just like, you know, all of this is going to keep happening until you look older, just because they won't respect your authority because you look young. Yeah. So it's not just like because I'm a woman, it's because I'm a woman who also is young. And why does that have any impact on my authority on this subject?
Yeah, dude, real quick before I forget, one more thing that I wanted to mention in speaking to this subject about like what stays with you. I did stand-up comedy for a little while. I wish that...
Cute! I know. Which I would say to a dude also. I would be like, oh, cute!
You cutie pie, you. I did that for like a hot second when I was working at this like place that did like a talent night or whatever, and it was fucking fun. I love doing stand-up, and I was telling pretty risque jokes, you know. There were definitely ones that when I was telling the joke, my heart was pounding out of my chest because I was like, oh, this is gonna make some people mad, you know. And it went over really well every single time, but I'm almost 150% sure that the only reason that it went over well was because I am a woman. So they were just like, ha ha ha, look how edgy this girl is. You know what I mean? Because that's things that, like I said, if I was a dude, there would definitely be some people waiting for me in the parking lot, I think. You know, is it cool that like I could get away with that? Yes, because I don't want to get punched in the face. But like, is it also darkly fucking obvious that I am getting away with it purely because I have a vagina? Yes, it is.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the same so if you're gonna game the patriarchy system, fuck yeah, more power to you. That's one reason I support all sex workers. Work what you got, like make that money, exploit your position, and, let's get them unionized because women deserve protections. And did you know that we had a law in Hawaii? This is so funny. The only reason that I knew that this law existed was because a court was like, you can't do this anymore. It's illegal. So private, if police officers, undercover officers, were going to arrest sex workers, prostitutes specifically, they could have sex with them and then arrest them. Yeah. And
what a
so,
yeah.
So the courts repealed this and police officers were up in arms. And I'm like, are you fucking serious that you think that you can't do your job without dehumanizing someone first? You're not even going to then pay them for the services they render.
You're just going to fucking actually end up slapping them with a bunch of fucking fines they can't afford. And like, you gross piece of shit. How do you sleep at night? You know what I mean? And that's the problem though, like the disconnect that it takes to be able to pull off a stunt like that, just as a human being in general, you know what I mean, is so fucking gross. She's not even a person to you. She is a vagina for your dick to go in, and then she is a fucking criminal to lock up. You know what I mean? Like, how hideous. Yeah, it's incredible the way that we just choose to turn blind eyes. And, there's all kinds of different ideas about feminism, and there's different waves of feminism, and that play the patriarchy game, get money. Yeah, dude, that's your choice. You're entitled to it. I feel like like anything, there's debate to be had on the effectiveness of whether or not that actually progresses equality forward, or if that just flips the coin. I am much more on the side of progressing equality.
Yeah, same.
I have a hard time dealing with a lot of the arguments on that side. I definitely support sex workers 100%. I support anybody doing anything that they need to do to, survive. It's when it starts being we're doing this because fuck men, right? Where it's okay, dude, hold on now. This isn't equality anymore. This just sounds like the opposite side of this toxic masculinity coin, where it's not every fucking man is a devil. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of men who are aiding in the fight for feminism. You can't just hate anybody for their fucking sexual organs or really anything. You can't just hate people for anything.
No,
you should have a good reason, and even if you have a good reason, that doesn't mean that you get to influence other people into hating those things too. It's just, we're just unrealistic about the way that we carry some things out. I think that's kind of where feminism and really positive movements like that kind of will end up shooting themselves in the foot sometimes, where we do take this thing where it's we've been so marginalized for so long, let's get ours. And it's okay, but this isn't solving a problem. This is only swinging the pendulum back in the other direction.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's something that you and I come back to all the time is it fair? Is it equal? Is it oppressive? Is it repressive? Are you trying to put your views onto someone, to limit someone else's existence? Or can you still operate with whatever your view is under this umbrella that also protects other people too?
Yeah, in a perfect world, in terms of gender roles or really anything else, belief systems, anything. My general philosophy would be like, I don't really give a shit what you're doing, dude. I would prefer you don't give a shit about what I'm doing, please. It seems so simple in my head, but that's definitely not the world that we live in. And, I think that's like, what we discussed like what intersectional feminism is on our last episode. And I don't know if we spoke to this exactly, but this sentiment that it's important to discuss the turnover of Roe versus Wade, because if you haven't realized it yet, then this is a very good example of just exactly how women, A, are marginalized as a whole half of the fucking species, but like B, how little they credit us to make the right decisions for ourselves. And so when we talk about gender roles, like, and what it means to be in a gender role, like, really, it can mean whatever the fuck you want it to, but more than anything, it should mean that it's yours and it's not anyone else's, just like anyone else's is not yours. You know what I mean? Assume whatever role you want, but just, leave everyone else the fuck alone. Yeah, it's a bummer. It's a bummer that comes with a bunch of really big issues on its side, like safety. Is it safe to be a woman in society? Is it safe to be queer in society? Is it safe to be trans in society? Like, no. It's not.
It's not funny, but it's also true. Yeah.
We have to laugh about these things. Just for everyone listening, we have to laugh because, like, if we don't, then they're just really depressing, and you guys don't want a depressing show.
We don't want that. And then I just want to wrap it up by saying all communities have their own expectations of how people are supposed to be, right? And punk rock is not excluded from that, even though the standards are different, the norms are different, like there still are norms and people will still try to enforce them. And just remember, as long as you're not hurting anyone, it's okay to stand up for yourself and be like, you can't, please don't tell me what to do, or like, I'm not doing this thing you expect of me. It's not my job to like dress this way, or it's not my job to make everyone dinner, when you're having band practice or whatever, just because you're a woman or you're there, or, you're the support person. So just keep that in mind, as long as you're not hurtful about it,
Was that Aleister Crowley's motto, do what thou will, harm no one, I think is his thing, or was it just do what thou will? Whose motto is that?
That's cool. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes too.
Okay, it's the Wiccan Morality Creed.
Oh, okay.
It's do what you thou wilt, harm none, which is pretty.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. Which, like, hell yeah, Wiccans, you like nature and cool stuff. I like that. Good for you. So we don't have a title for this episode.
I actually,
oh, do you?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. So I found a lyric from the Anti-Queens, which I really like. It's from their new album, Run. And it's, I'll take your fragile pride and crush it with my favorite pair of shoes. I don't know. I just loved that because shoes, everybody has shoes, What are your favorite pair of shoes?
This is going to get into some nerd shit. I am a minimalist shoe wearer because I grew up in Hawaii. I cannot wear shoes. They are so shitty, especially on my toes. I wore rubber slippers my entire life. It made my feet very wide. So now they started this like minimalist shoe trend. And now it's like, I have a pair of Zero, spelled Xero shoes. They're actually winter boots, but they feel like wearing a pair of Converses, like in terms of how thin they are, but they're super waterproof and they're super warm, and they were like $160, but they're like the best purchase I ever made. So shout out to Zero Shoes. You guys make killer shoes.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many feminist anthems out there. This would actually be kind of fun. Maybe let's do this. In the weeks coming before this episode is released, we'll put it out on our Instagram to hear what everybody's favorite gender role-esque lyrics are. And we'll see if we can find a winner. How does that sound to you?
I love that. Yeah, let's do that.
Cool. We're going to put all the responsibility on you guys.
Yeah, and we just made 200 followers on our Instagram. So yay, thank you.
Yeah, everyone. Guys, that's so cool. You guys are so cool. Thank you for listening. And one thing I wanted to correct myself from the last episode that we released. I said that there was a Nazi riot in Gainesville. It was not Gainesville. It was Charlottesville.
Yeah, it was Charlottesville. And it was the Unite the Right rally. And they're not called neocons. They're called alt-rights.
They're fucking Nazis, but
yeah, they're Nazis. full on Nazis. Yes.
Let's just call a spade a spade. Let's call a Nazi a Nazi.
Yeah, I would like to shout out Surge, a really cool organization that tries to advance racial justice. So it's showing up for racial justice is what it stands for. And they believe in being white people that stand up against racism and fascism, and like to show people that there are other ways to be white than racist, basically.
Yeah, sure.
So they're really cool. And there's chapters all over the United States. So you can check out if they have one near you.
Right on. Is there any bands you want to shout out this week? Anything good you've been listening to?
Yeah, I really like this band called Spanish Love Songs. My favorite song by them, I just had it pulled up and now I don't, is Self-Destruction as a Sensible Career Choice. And like it's got a really cool beat, I don't know. It's really great melodically, and then the lyrics are just awesome too. It's what you would expect, I think, from a song called Self-Destruction as a Sensible Career Choice. There's a nice mix of irony in there. What about you?
Nothing new for anybody who doesn't know too much about punk or is just getting into this scene. If you want to listen to a really good fucking album, I was just re-listening to the album The Plot Sickens by His Hero Is Gone. Such a fucking good album. It can be found on Spotify. So if you guys are into that kind of like melodic, crusty, hardcore punk, then check out The Plot Sickens by His Hero Is Gone.
Awesome. Well, I guess that's about it for today.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening, and we'll check back in with you guys next week. Hopefully things are mellow this week. If things can just stay mellow, that would be great.
Best of luck to you.